It's always wonderful having your company. It's a Wednesday, a wonderful Wednesday, of course. Thank you for your company. We call this the AM Show, and my name is Benjamin Akakpo. Now, coming up today, you know how we do it in the course of our news review. We're going to be hosting another big one in the person of Dr. Kwame Asasante. He's political scientist and director for European Studies at the University of Ghana. He joins us with his thoughts on myriad matters that we're going to be discussing this morning. Join us for that one. But when it comes to our big stories, and I'll be telling you about the big stories right after telling you about, well, AM Business, which we bring you every Wednesday. Now, today, it's going to get even more interesting. Courtesy of EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank, Charles Aite engages this. But now back to the big stories. We're talking the E-levy, and I don't know when this brouhaha is going to end. President Akufo-Addo, the president, says his government is determined to push through the passage of the E-levy. We've been told by the finance minister that if no E-levy, we're going to crumble, basically. Our economy is going to be in shambles. He says the revenue gaps in the budget are going to be filled by the E-levy on the back of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's what Mr. President has been saying. And it gets even more interesting. In the news review, I just want you to know, we're going to get into the bit of active deployment. But also on our radar this morning, something we all feel the pinch of. It has to do with fuel prices. When we talk deregulation, you know exactly what that means. Now, what is going to be happening in the face of the price stabilization levy or bill now that it is back on the drawing board? Prices are going up. How do you feel about that? You'll be sharing with us on social media and right here on the show. We'll also get into the bit about the Speaker's absence and how it affects parliamentary proceedings from Manshia North. And then right in the middle, Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC. Don't you forget, we'd love to hear from you. The hashtag is AM Show. Do share your thoughts with us. Right now, we bring you the news. Do stay.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the AM News with me, Mapisa Sibidi. In our first story, the Majority Leader, or State Chairman Sabonsu, says the resolve of his side to endorse the passage of the E-levy is because they are standing with the Republic. In the view of the Swami MP, the approval of the E-levy will redirect the economy on the path of progress. His comment comes after the Minority Leader, Haruna Jesu, insisted that his side of the House will stand with the people of Ghana to reject the E-levy. Mr. Judicial has been speaking on the floor of the House.
Order 53, Standing Order 53, but in particular, Standing Order 160. Mr. Speaker, I'm raising this issue so that the Leader of Government Business will provide clarity and certainty to an important matter of public interest and for purposes of the Ghanaian economy and fiscal consolidation. Mr. Speaker, Order 1602 provides, maybe I should just read one. There shall be a business committee consisting of members. That's not my interest, but Hansard to look at it. It shall be the function of the committee subject to Order 53, Order of Business, to determine the business of each sitting and the order in which it shall be taken. E-levy. And for the second reading of the E-levy, to debate the principles of the E-levy. Mr. Speaker, we need to know, earlier on when we adopted the business statement for the previous week, the E-levy we were told would have been introduced tomorrow. Now we get it introduced on Friday. And then today, as I watch the order of business pursuant to Standing Order 53, I do not see anything relating to the E-levy. Mr. Speaker, on this important matter, there can be no surprises. So we want the Leader of Government Business to lead us through. When will it be, if it's to be reintroduced, a new bill, or Article 106, the bill is gazetted for us to know, or we are continuing wanting under Article 106 to suspend our standing order to take it as a matter of urgency. Mr. Speaker, members need to know, because on this matter, as we have publicly said, We want to stand with the public in our opposition and rejection of the bill. We don't want to be taken by surprises. So let the leader of government business indicate to us when the bill will come to Parliament and in what form we should anticipate or expect it.
Responding to the minority leader, the majority leader, Osei Mensah-Bonsu, assured that a determination will be made in the shortest time on when the House will debate the policy of the levy.
I said, if we're able to conclude the discussions. Now, the course of the discussion facilitated the introduction in the House on Friday. And the Speaker, as you all witnessed, we couldn't make much progress, which is why I said to us that if we couldn't, then it will come to this week. The Speaker, even before walking in here, the minority leader, who is the ranking member of the Bills Committee, asked about the status, and I told him that we will come to some determination, even though it's been advertised for tomorrow. So you look at the supplementary order paper today. The Speaker, you will see the provisional order paper. You will see it advertised for tomorrow. But even that, I told him that we need to confer on that because to all intents and purposes, we may not be able to do it tomorrow. So he asked whether that was an assurance. And I said to him that that is double assurance. That certainly it will not come off tomorrow. But we'll determine when him and then we agree on a common date. The Speaker, the minority leader is adding that they have taken a position that they want to stand with the public to reject the E-levy. And he says that with all emphasis. The Speaker, we on this side want to stand with the Republic to ensure the revitalization of the economy. We want to stand with the Republic to ensure the revitalization of the economy. If people want to see the collapse of the economy, so be it for them. We want to stand with the Republic.
Economist Kwame Pian says until members of Ghana's parliament apologize to the nation for their recent exchange of blows and misconduct on the floor of parliament, he will never refer to them as honourable. Speaking at the launch of the John Evans Atta Mills Memorial Heritage Atta Mills.
Most of the politicians now will not dare. They will say the supporters will kill us. We are terrified of the supporters we have. We've militarized them. Foot soldiers, we are scared of them. Invisible forces, boot for boot. This is what we are inheriting now, the children in Parliament. I now refuse to address any parliamentarian as honorable. It was aspirational, they are dimming. So I will not address any of them as honorable until they apologize to the nation. Professor Mills was always looking at the other side. How many, he didn't see political colors. How many of you remember when he was campaigning and he went to Ewisa, the constituency of Yaosafo Mafo and Ejay Mafo? He opted to sleep in the house of similar houses next door to one another. We are paralyzed. We need people to go across the political divide. And Mills definitely have crossed the political divide.
Former President John Dramani Mahama, who was sworn in right after John Atta Mills died, says this is his first time he speaks about his late boss on a public platform.
dull and hazy nation in sorrow, anguish, and in tears. And my following reminiscences are the first time I'm talking publicly of this sad event. That fateful day, I had been alerted that I would be asked to act because Prof was likely to travel to Nigeria. I was informed by his secretary, Sir James Bebako-Mensah, that he had requested specifically that I stand in for him at the official launch of the Brand Ghana project, which was to take place at the International Conference Center. I attended that function with the Chief of Staff, Mr. John Martin Newman. Upon our return to the castle, which at that time was still then the seat of government, as I proceeded to my office, I asked Chief of Staff Martin Newman to inform Prof that I was going to cross over and see him to discuss a few important issues after meeting with a former president who was waiting in my office. Moments at the 7th Military Hospital in an emergency. I wrapped up my meeting with the former president and prepared my staff to rush to the hospital. It was then that Sir James Bebako-Mensah entered my office and delivered the devastating news. Prof dead. How? How can Prof die? Were the questions I asked. The world came to a standstill. Nothing in my political life and experience had prepared me for a moment like this. The shelter of working under Prof had been a wonderful experience. His death left me in trepidation of stepping up to the plate, realizing the huge responsibility one was stepping into, and that the buck was going to stop with me and no one else. The swearing-in ceremony was a blur, and I struggled to complete my acceptance speech without breaking down in front of a sorrowful nation. When I left the podium, I missed my way back and went and sat back in my vice presidential seat until the uproar from the MPs.
Camphor is two scientists has revealed consumers of street-vended fufu and fried rice may be suffering from ailments caused by the presence of camphor in their foods. The research found dangerous levels of camphor in these foods. Joy News medical reporter Dr. Nita Pasram speaks with the lead scientist, Dr. Gloria Matanda Ankar Brewu of the Department of Food Science and Nutrition, KNUST.
Yes, camphor, I've been using it for a very long time. I use it in my room. It gives a very good odor when you put it inside your room. It drives away insects like mosquito, cockroaches, and ants. It's very good at times. I also put it in my water.
Naphthalene is the main ingredient in camphor, which is commonly used by locals for water purification. Do you know it has several side effects? From skin irritations to gastrointestinal problems such as diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, and some neurological problems such as confusion and convulsions. Yes.
Naphthalene, I'm sure we are all familiar with on our eyes and helps us even go blind with age.
The scientists found that the concentrations of camphor in hot pepper sauce and fried rice was as high as 6,500 milligrams per kilogram.
The polyaromatics that was mostly identified in all the researches that have followed later, we realized that naphthalene is also one of the high fetch overnight. They want to try and then sediment the debts that are in it. So they use the aluminum ball, the naphthalene balls to sediment the debt. And so by so doing, though it's hydrophobic, it doesn't dissolve easily, but it has a lower rate of dissolution. So slowly, after it's there for a very long time, by the time you realize it has dissolved completely in the water, and then we are adding more naphthalene balls. Naphthalene is repellent. We reduce that a lot.
They also recommend the review of policies that govern the use of camphor in food preparation processes. Reporting for Joy News, Dr. Netta Pashram.
Some heads of senior high schools in the central region say they are compelled to use tricycles to go to school because of the unavailability of vehicles in the schools. Many schools are said to be struggling with many heads using their private vehicles to run the schools. At a handing over of some buses and pick employed on the government to assist such schools. Richard Kwajonyako has more in this report.
Many of the schools in the central region have been in dire need of vehicles to support the academic and administrative activities at the various schools. At a brief ceremony to hand over some buses and pickups to some senior high schools in the central region, immediate past Central Regional Chairperson of the Conference of Heads of Assisted Senior High Schools, Cecilia Jo, revealed the picture of how some heads use tricycles to go to school to perform their functions, while others have to use the outcomes.
It has not been easy. Some heads, and even as one, has been working with our own vehicles for almost 6 years. And this is the 7th year before having the vehicle. We thank God so much. We are so grateful to the NPP government for fulfilling its promise that when they come in power, they're going to provide the logistics for the schools. Gradually they are on it. And it's a good sign. But Honorable Minister, as we said, there are 76 schools. But there are some schools in dire need as well. A school like Bontrase, here in Cape Coast, Ghana National, they are suffering a Futu, Christ the King Academy.
Central Regional Minister Justina Marigodasan assured the schools government was committed to improving their situations. She was optimistic government would resource schools that are facing such challenges.
And the teachers who don't also have, want to promise them it will not end here. We'll take the necessary steps to go to the minister to ask for more for those heads who have not received these vehicles. Should also urge them to do their work and do it very well. You needed vehicles because your works were suffering. Now you have them. So this should propel you to move a step ahead and step further to make sure the performance we want in the region is also improved. We will do everything in our capacity to support your work.
In all, 17 vehicles comprising 8 buses and 9 pickups were handed over to some of the schools in the region. Reporting for Joy News, Richard Kwejonyako, Cape Coast.
Ghana is one of the countries with the highest level of a scooter. For disabled people, the device made from plywood and reusable plastic materials is only one of the items that 17-year-old Samuel Abaje has made. Justice Bedu went to meet him.
My name is Samuel Abaje. I'm 17-year-old boy. I attend school at Agri Road PSS.
Samuel is a genius. At 17, he has wowed many building devices.
I live in Tema. You see, the community is very dirty, and also it's full of plastic and other things. So I want to build a company that will help the youth and also to reuse the plastic to make something.
He has made a scooter, a refrigerator, a Bluetooth speaker, and many more, using stuff as basic as
get to your windows, they will left, so I decided to do a Bluetooth speaker with the gallon so that it cannot be found in the gallons around environment and other stuff. In Ghana here, we don't use the sun to do anything. We don't use it to, but we can use a solar panel to power because solar panel is renewable and it is readily available, so we can use it for another. It has to be powered by solar panel, and because the solar panel, when you are going and the solar panel will just charge it, and when the battery gets low, you just have to stop somewhere and just you are just say you are you are pressing your phone and 10 minutes later you can move.
My name is David Sam Hagan and I teach science at Agro 2 JHS.
Samuel by his science teacher at the local school where he recently graduated from.
I need him to be put in a higher education, that is where he can build his capacity electrically and every stuff about building or inventing his own models, because he's having so much in him that whatever we are seeing is just like 10% of what he can do. Trust me, he can do more if he's put...
And hopes to better his skills soon. Samuel intends to take his innovation to the world and to show that so much could be done with so little. Justice Baidu, Joy News, Tema.
And that's how we end the AM News. For more news, you can log into myjoyonline.com. My name is Mapisa CBD. The AM show continues with Benjamin Akakpo.
Welcome aboard. Thank you for making the time to join us in the course of this news review. Joining us shortly, Kwame Asah-Asante, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who is with the Political Science Department at University of Ghana, as well as the Institute for European Studies. He joins the conversation as we get into the papers and talk about all the topical matters in Ghana and beyond. Let's quickly get into it, but let me say a very good morning to Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. Always refreshing having you, Doc.
Good morning, my brother.
And your shirts, where do you get them from? Always very colorful. I think you should connect me, Doc.
Why not? Why not? I have a tailor friend at Ekropon who does it for me.
Ekroponto, yes. I see.
Oh, yes.
I
yes,
see.
Yes.
I see. The Ekropon connection. Well, thank you for joining us for another morning. We'll get into the papers shortly, but a few things I'm familiar with. Coup d'etats. You heard, your colleague in those circles, academic circles recently, Professor Kwesi Ening, suggest that by the middle of next year, we would have had at least 2 more coups in the sub-region. Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired, has shared, thoughts akin to what Professor Ening is saying. Many of your compatriots are saying West African leaders specifically are not doing the right thing. Here we are with Guinea-Bissau getting right on the cusp of a coup, foiled attempt, but some dead and all of that. Why is...
About 2-3 solutions. One, we need to change some of the ECOWAS protocol on elections, where we change constitution for a 3rd time and allow soldiers to come in and take over the administration of civilian government. That is one. 2, we need to strengthen the frontiers of good governance in West Africa, because if you look at the justification for coups, they are born out of what? Maladministration, corruption, and all the evils of democracy. So we need to up our game in terms of good governance. We try to be accountable as possible, transparent as possible, and also respond to the needs of the people. And of course, fight corruption head on, not to pay any lip service. And then the 3rd one is that we need to always continue to educate and inform our people. I'm talking about the citizenry of every state, that their destinies are in their own hands, and that when they get opportunity to change government, they need to throw away government that are incompetent, that are insensitive, government that are more, authoritarian and the like. They don't need to exchange their votes with money, with goodies, and what have you, because that would define their destiny. When we get these basics right, I'm sure we'll be able to stem the tide. But of course, if the going get tough for us, why not? We can also call for assistance from international community. One would say that, why are you an independent state and you still need the support of Western world and Western institutions? Right. Let us remember that in spite of our independence and the freedoms that we enjoy, we still go for them in terms of loans, in terms of financial bailouts and what have you. So we are still, dependent on these institutions and countries for our survival. So if the need be, why not?
Well, interestingly, Guinea-Bissau is a former Portuguese colony, and they are one of the poorest countries in the world. In fact, they are saddled with a lot of foreign debt. And I guess that has been one of the crucial matters that people have spoken about, that not justify coup d'etats, but sort of give some credence when the people are suffering and they feel that there is no legitimate way of changing governments. It appears this is becoming fashionable for military leaders or coup makers to step in. Economically speaking, what would you proffer that West African leaders start looking at to curb the menace? Because there would be no justification if economically our countries are in a good stead.
Yes. If you look at a theory that guides military adventurism, it's about civilian regime performance. Right. And one basic factor under this theory is that when there is poverty, when there is impoverishment, when people can't find jobs and all that, then you give cause for people to worry. And that any savior, in quotes, that comes in, the public is ready to welcome that person. Right. So on that note, I believe that we need to step up our game in terms of what? Building a very solid economic base for our people, so that people can find jobs, people can find means of livelihood, and people can get gainful employment to be able to live their lives. Other than that, we are going to be, we are going to struggle to deal with this issue, which is gradually becoming albatross around our necks.
But come to think of it, a curious thought, Dr. Asante, in the 60s, starting right here in Ghana, and what happened, that putsch that ousted Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, then the domino effect across the region, Nigeria and other countries. We had our own turmoil in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when it comes to coup d'etats. Then we had a pretty quiet, let's say, 2 to 3 decades. And then it started getting fashionable after 2000 again, 2000s, And here we are again with another wave, if you like, of coup d'etats. Is there any connection? I mean, apart from these matters we're talking of, the economic issues and like in Burkina Faso, the failure to deal with terrorist groups, but are there undercurrents that allow for these to happen from time to time?
Yes, apart from what we have said, we have also not been vigilant enough. Why am I saying that? Sometimes you ask yourself, why are people mishandling the administration of the state and civilians are sitting unconcerned? We have not been vigilant enough. But let us remember that vigilance is the price of liberty. So we need to continue to educate our people to be vigilant, speak louder about issues that concern them, and always trying to criticize government when there is a need to do that. We more often than not tend to pamper government, tend to as it were, support administration of political parties unnecessarily. We tend to also be moved by political tradition that, this is a political party that I support. Whether they are administering well or not, I'm not going to change my position, and I'm not going to say anything ill about the government. Once we do that, we set the stage for chaos, and the results will definitely affect our livelihoods.
Well, here we are, and as a region, a sub-region, and as a country, I guess there are a lot of lessons to learn. But let's get into the papers now, if you will indulge me. The Daily Graphic, I'm going to start with. UTAG unfair, that's according to government. The story is on page 13. Let me just give you some details of that, because I definitely want you to comment on this story. And Nuke's just quick resolution of impasse. So according to this story on page 13, the government has described the demands and the posture of the University Teachers Association of Ghana as unfair to parents and students. It emphasized that on June 16 last year, the government and UTAG signed a memorandum of understanding satisfactorily resolving issues relating to the conditions. At the time, as per the MOU of June 2021, was the matter of research allowances. Now, In an interview with the Daily Graphic, a highly placed source at the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations explained that the negotiations, which started on a list of COSs in 2019, had a general framework agreed as all non-payroll items such as marking allowances and invigilation allowances. It goes on to talk about the base pay and NUCs now entering to call on government and you, the striking university lecturers, to get back to post. UTAG is being unfair. That's what government is saying. Don't you feel you are being unfair to some extent, UTAG members? Doc.
What do you expect government to say? Leave the very profession that gives them what livelihoods. Do you think so? And what is more is that we don't only teach students, but we teach our family members, friends, and loved ones. So we are also concerned about this. But as I've already said, that agreement is agreement. What happens to the 2013 agreement that was reached? Has government been very honorable in that regard? So if you hear statements like this from government, as a political scientist, I can understand. These are some of the things you have to say and save your face from the public. But the stark reality is on paper and is dawning on the state right now.
When you say these are some of the things you have to say to save face, are you suggesting that government, one, hasn't done the right thing, and they're just trying to create the impression that you are to blame for this, but in fact, they are to blame? Is that what you're saying?
Pusha has not been welcoming.
Prof. John Paul said
that people that even governments send to such programs sometimes don't have the capacity to speak the way they ought to. And sometimes we have also heard from our leadership that government drag its feet in all this. All that I'm saying is that if you think the UTAG have no business to do what they are doing, do you think that as a body, legitimate as a test and very respectable one like this, would take this position just to be outside the classroom and then create problem for everybody? Let us be honest to ourselves. Political leadership requires a certain level of honesty. You need to be very honest in things that you say, so that at least when you have a concern, people can appreciate and understand you. But if it's going to be, be guided sincerely, that they will be able to find a amicable solution to this, so that the strike and the ones that are happening within the labor front in other sectors of the economy will be a thing of the past. I am hopeful.
You're hopeful, but the 21-day window is almost at its end. And in fact, some of your students, even at the University of Ghana, have started heading home because their parents are saying they are in school, they are not studying anything, they are wasting money, so to speak. And some of them have started making their way home. Do you have hope? Because the most recent deliberations that you've had with the employer and even the NLC have not amounted to much. Do you think, honestly, that you as members can scrape through?
Whether the schools will shut down or not, I don't have a hand in that, and I have no control in that area. I have been a student who also experienced that in 1994 for 8 months. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case. But if that is going to be the case, then it's the decision by the various universities. But on a more serious note, what I want to say is that, look, I don't think government will allow the strike to drag on so that teachers and students will be out of classroom. I'm not sure that is the interest of government. That is why I'm saying that it is.
But what if genuinely government cannot give you what you're looking for? Then that is exactly what is going to happen. If government cannot meet your demands, some teaching in school. If government can't meet your demands, it means it is going to happen.
Let us know that I'm not one of the leaders of UTAG. I'm speaking as a teacher of the university. But my view is that if government is able to sit at the table with UTAG, they will find a amicable solution to this problem. I'm not sure this is very daunting. There's a way out to every problem, including this one.
Just to run by you as we move the conversation forward, yesterday on our sister station, Joy Prime Morning, they had a discussion with Philip Christian Ama, President, University Students Association of Ghana. We are not going to sit down for the universities to be closed. Not every student is being taken care of by their guardians or parents. There are students who are working and fending for themselves. He also says, our position is that we have paid school fees and we demand to be taught. How do you respond to that in just some 15 seconds?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we are in this quagmire, but I believe that it is a decision worth pursuing. Why am I saying that? We also have paid fees as parents who have wards and children in the university. But except that, we need to also fight for the little guys with parents, with students and all that. But we also have to sympathize with ourselves that whatever we need in terms of our remuneration, we are giving that so that we all get to classroom and start a new life.
Let's dig into some more stories. And on page 20, Asin North MP dragged to the Supreme Court. I'm talking about Mr. James Jachikwason. Apparently, the service that was meant for him was going to be communicated through Parliament, the Speaker. Now, the Right Honourable Speaker is not at post, and now the directive is that he be served personally, that it be served on his person. But what I want to find out from you is not all the how to, but it has to do with the timing. And some of those in the minority suggest that just because of the E-levy, which this administration is trying to push through, of course, with the Speaker not at post, you have parity, 137 members apiece. If one of them steps in as Speaker, like Joe Osei-Wusu would do, it would leave them with a lower number from 138 in the caucus. And so this is just an attempt to water down the numbers of the NDC in Parliament so they can push the E-levy through. I mean, the timing, what do you think about it?
I'm not seized with all the facts in this case, but what I can say is that if you look at court processes, I don't think it has a particular time frame within which they are served on people. So me not being a lawyer, I will not venture into that area that much. So I'll be pleased if we can skip this and move into other areas that I'm more comfortable.
Anyway, it was just about the timing and not necessarily the legal processes, but whether, I mean, this could have the intent of trying to score political points. But I concede, and we shall move on from there. Here's another area of interest in the Daily Graphic. 10-year study on corruption prevalence, in fact, is the banner headline. Unregulated party financing to blame. And we are going back to the CPI, the Corruption Perceptions Index, and Ghana scoring 43. And this is one of the points that the CPI made forcefully, that we ought to look at party financing, corruption when it comes to campaigning, and again about tweaking our constitution. Is it high time on the back of this latest report from Transparency International and the GII in Ghana that we took a look at this, especially in this context, political party financing? What do you think?
Oh, I have said this time and again. And if you look at the work that the Department of Political Science have done with the law faculty over the years, Professor Kwame Ninsing and Professor Kofi Kumadu and their colleagues spent a whole lot of time looking at how we can get away with this type of problem. But the nation at a point in time, it is true that if we want to fight corruption, one clear way to deal with it is how we fund political parties. This is so because what the law prescribes is not what we do. We have all manner of people who support political parties and fund them. But when it comes to the kind of reward that they get in terms and political parties, for that matter, hypocritically will always come out and tell us that they will fight corruption. They will fight corruption head on. I am afraid they are not going to do that. It is just a political gimmick. Because if you look at the factors that are responsible for voter choices in this country, the third is corruption. Everybody knows that. So political parties will always come out, deceive people into believing that they are in to fight corruption, only to come to office and do a different thing. Over the years, me as a student of politics, have observed with much difficulty that we are not ready to fight corruption. Why am I saying that? We have used all manner of methods, imprisonment, we have used jingles, slogans, we have used all manner of means to deal with corruption, but they are very ineffective. The simple reason is that political leadership lacked political will to deal with cases of corruption from within their parties, and that is the bane that this country is facing. It's very, very unfortunate. But you know, one of the evils of democracy is how you deal with an age-long problem. If you are not able to do democracy such as the one we have. But I believe that going forward, if we want to still consolidate and firm the edges of this democracy, one task that is ahead of all of us is to what? Work and fight corruption head on and stop paying lip service to the fight. If we are able to do this, then we can breathe a sigh of relief and get our game in place.
Speaking of democracy, which is what you ended on, Jose on Facebook watching us live, you say this thing called democracy is not working. There's also Pablo who says, I'm watching live from Nyamiso Obwa Bisuman, who is watching live in the Kintampo North District. Thank you all for doing the watching. In sports, wrapping up with the Daily Graphic, Senegal, Burkina Faso clash in KG semis tonight. Let's do the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Child labor on cocoa farms, 33,180 children in danger. That's according to a Child Rights International report. And here's what it says. If you cast your mind back, you would realize that by Child Rights International, and they say a total of 33,180 children from some cocoa communities in the country are at risk of becoming child laborers, according to a child labor monitoring report by the Child Rights International. Out of the number, 64.1% are males, with the remaining 35.9% being females. Child rights and how we deal with them, basically, in our country. How much of a worry is it for you, Doc? And are we making enough strides? What do you want to see?
It's a worrying situation because when I was a student at Ghana Institute of Journalism, I was the president for International Journalists for Children's Rights. So I've been at the forefront of children's affairs over the years. And then when I became an editor of a newspaper, I took the mantle and also fought until I left the scene. It's very unfortunate that we are where we are now. I admit that institutions such as Child Rights International and other allied organizations have done their best, but we are still having problems with this. All that is very unfortunate. We need to continue to give education to farmers that there is no point employing or abusing children on their farms. You need to hire qualified laborers to work for you if you really want to stay in that business. And then we should also go ahead to enforce the rules regarding abuse of children in this light. More often than not, we are quick as a state to come out with laws that regulate the lives and welfare of children. But we are not, the difficulty is. But I believe that we need more advocacy, more rhetorics, aim at strengthening the institutions to be able to fight this canker in our society. It's unfortunate because some of these things are very, very injurious to the lives of children. And let us remember that in the Constitution, the decision that we take about children should always be in the best interest of our children. Is that what we are doing now? We as a state must bow our head in shame that we have left children in such a sorrowful situation and only come back to shed crocodile tears about how they are being abused. If we really want to enforce the rules regarding abuse of children, we'll be able to do that. Why are we reneging on our promise to do this for the sake of motherland? I am sorry that we need to take very bold decisions and enforce the law rigidly without fear or favor. This is the only way to go, and this is how a message can be sent to those who are having a field day in this area of production in our country.
We need to be stern. Positive thoughts there. Republic Press newspaper now. Akufo-Addo seeking to use judiciary to prevent Asin North MP from voting. That's according to Region Today. And Magdan's woes deepen as GACL, that's the Ghana Airport Company Limited, shuts down private jet terminal. Interesting, the details coming from the Ghana Airport Company Limited on the back of this. Of course, yesterday we had that letter from Magdan Aviation saying they were shutting down operations till certain measures had been put in place. But let's go back to the E-levy. Martin Amidu jumps into E-levy fight. He is accusing government of arrogance, impunity, and abuse of power. And Esibe Yabua, burst MPP bubble, says E-levy is not the way. Just a quote of what a citation of what he says. The former New Patriotic Party Member of Parliament for New Drammen South and a one-time chair of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Dr. Mark Esibe-Yeboah, has urged government to think through its decision to shun the International Monetary Fund in the face of the country's dwindling barometer yesterday, the CDD, which points to the fact that about 80%, it's fallen from about 90% between 2011 and 2013. But in 2019, we have about 72 to 79% of Ghanaians who are willing to pay taxes, but they want to see more from establishment or government. Or should we, in this instance, go back to the status quo, what it has been always, the IMF? What is your quick take on that?
I have observed, as a student of political economy, with a lot of pain, that as soon as there are little problems within the finance in tears. Why am I saying that? Because time and again, we realize that you get a regime that promises to do the basics right, and then we get our economic, policies right. But a very little problem, then we quickly run to the solution to this problem. But what I can say is that, look, you cannot govern any society without finance. You need to concentrate on the extractive capacity of the state, where you generate resources to run the affairs of the state. But it shouldn't only be on taxation, because some of the taxes become nuisance and affect even stability of the state. So whilst we want to pursue this agenda, we must open ourselves up in terms of the way we think, to look for other avenues where we can create wealth and make our country better. Let us look at the fact that this mobile phone also create something that we can leverage on to build our society. That is the way to go. There are a lot of things that we can do in this country. Look at even value addition of raw primary commodities that we send to the outside market. Can't we add values here? Taking cocoa alone, visited Creek and found a lot of things we have done with cocoa. What has happened to that dream? Are we throwing that one away and going for this short route, which is creating all manner of problem for our society? There are a lot that we can do if we open ourselves up for discussion and tell the public, so that we all can come to the rescue of the government, than we always charting a path which is so difficult and doesn't create any breathing space for us. It's very, very unfortunate. There are a lot of ways that we can do to create jobs. Let us look at issue of even training people and sending them outside for export, in terms of human resource export, and we can generate resources from that. We can also expand, the economy by adding more traditional commodities into the system, and then see how best they can also fly within the system. There are a lot. And there are a lot of people. This country is endowed with human resource, that if government, decide to open its arms and allow people to come in, they will be able to proffer the needed solution that we can depend on to run the affairs of the state.
Doc, let's wrap with these 2 points very quickly. The first one has to do with fuel prices. And in the final newspaper, 3 months that we published on My Joy Online, and it talks about the SRL, the National Petroleum Authority, indicating its decision to restore the price stabilization levy. Of course, we know what this means. It's going to affect fuel prices, which already COPEC and other institutions or think tanks are talking about, getting an uptick. With all of these happening, it appears we're in dire financial straits, because even the very things that were cushioning us are now being taken away again, and the pinch is going to be felt even more in terms of fuel pricing.
Yeah, the problem not out of the woods yet. I am surprised that we still have this problem on our hands. We need to do the needful to be able to address this issue head on. If we need to pay realistic prices for the things that we consume, why not? But always you see politics rearing its ugly heads in that type of business, where we want to reduce prices of commodities, and then making sure that we live up to a certain expectation that we don't have the resources to support and defend at all times. That is unfortunate. That's propaganda, and then look at the realities of the situation and deal with it head on. That is the only way to go, because every year we get, or every time we get this issue, cheap political point, you see politicians coming in to, tell us what we cannot support, tell us what we cannot fund. And at the end of the day, when the reality is done on us, we want to come out with realistic prices. We should shy away from that type of business and come to terms with the realities of the time.
Doc, let's put a full stop to the conversation at this juncture. We're very grateful that you've joined us for another morning, and we wish you a beautiful day. But he joined us for this news review. Coming up next, we have sports, and after that, we get into our big stories for the day. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We call this AM Business, brought to you by EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. Now, some local contractors are making a case for government to prioritize them over their foreign counterparts when it comes to the awarding of contracts. Figures show that local contractors in Ghana win less than 10% of government contracts for infrastructure projects. Today on AM Business, Charles Aite engages one such contractor, rubbing shoulders with his international.
They see to the completion of various construction projects in the country. But local contractors feel sidelined in the awarding and supervision of government projects and initiatives.
I am the MD for Joyce Proch Limited Company. We are into construction, especially factory building.
Rubbing shoulders with international counterparts. We equally have what it takes to deliver, he tells me.
It's about time the government looked at giving attention to the local contractor. If we do so, it will create jobs for the teeming youth in Ghana.
Leading a team of local engineers paid in dollars engage in. He's concerned about its economic implication to the country.
There is always the capital flight when there is a foreign dominance of contractors or dominance of foreign contractors in Ghana. There's this issue of capital flight. You expect the local contractor to mobilize, or we call it mobilization. And when you approach a financial institution or a bank for such facility, they sometimes put in impediments. They want to see your past year total revenue. Sometimes grant you such facility.
And you mostly don't have that.
And we don't have that. And it's very difficult. But sometimes the foreign-based contractors, they're able to acquire such facilities right from their countries.
Sure.
And they come with very low, high interest rate. Even if they agree to give you the credit, it comes with high interest rate. And this interest rate...
So you feel as if local contractors are being crowded out of the industry?
Yes.
From the banking industry,
yes.
government to
yes.
So does it therefore suggest that you guys are very extinct in the market currently? You are dying off naturally?
Not really. We are not so much dying, but we are facing serious... The government came to our rescue. And if interest rate can be made very affordable for us, it will help us.
Help us understand how much Ghana is losing out of the local contracting industry if care isn't taken.
It's available to the local contractors. It can help the government's own development drive. It can help. Ghana is losing so much money to foreign contractors. I will estimate that.
So currently, where do you see the future of foreign contractors, of local contractors, and why do you want us to, like the nation to?
There should be enabling environment for us, because for the foreign contractors, as I said, they have cheap source of loans. The government can also set aside such loans, which will be very easy. There are schemes we know in the past, but such schemes is not just easy to
seek employment opportunities abroad.
I attended Takoradi Technical University. I offered civil engineering as a course. I graduated in 2018. After the graduation, I had a chance to work with a couple of
Shadrach Oben is a civil engineer. He wants situations to change for the government to focus more on local contractors.
The experience that I've acquired, I wish, because most especially when you build the local engineers or local contractors, you get a chance to have a couple of ideas from them because of one or two things like the language barrier and then culture that we will have with them, aside the foreign contractors, because with the foreign contractors, most especially Chinese and then Greece, when you be with them, because of the language barrier and the other thing, challenging. So getting a chance to be with Joyce, being a local contractor, when you are with them, working is very simple. You have a chance to be with local guys all around who will make your work easier for you. And at the same time, I think getting a chance here, you have a contract here going on. I wish government can come in to support the local contractor that we are working with so that things can move on smoothly as compared to the foreign work of things here. And being a civil engineer, if things or certain opportunities given to me, I think I can equip up to develop the talent and then come up with a new thing that I want to achieve.
Government, through the Infrastructure Fund of the APFA Capital Expenditure, made a total allocation of 441 million cedis for roads and other infrastructure.
I wouldn't say the foreign participation or the presence of foreign contractors is a problem. I wouldn't say it's a problem. It is a blessing in disguise. The skills that I have developed over the years, I've acquired them from foreign companies. But my challenge has to do with the dominance.
Government deepen investment in the realm of infrastructure, purposefully under the One District, One Factory initiative. There is so much demand for contractors in Ghana and abroad. Local contractors are therefore making an urgent call for some priority as they cite not just the economic reason, the country's infrastructural design. I'm Charles Aite reporting for Joy Business.
Standing Order 53, but in particular, Standing Order 160. Mr. Speaker, I'm raising this issue so that the leader of government business will provide clarity and certainty to an important for purposes of the Ghanaian economy and fiscal consolidation. Mr. Speaker, Order 1602 provides, maybe I should just read one. There shall be a business committee consisting of members. That's not my interest, but Hansard to look at it. It shall be the function of the committee subject to Order 53, Order of Business, to determine the business of each sitting. There was effort to introduce the E-levy, and for the second reading of the E-levy, to debate the principles of the E-levy. Mr. Speaker, we need to know, earlier on when we adopted the business statement for the previous week, the E-levy we were told would have been introduced tomorrow. And today, as I watch the order of business pursuant to Standing Order 53, I do not see anything relating to the E-levy. Mr. Speaker, on this important matter, there can be no surprises. So we want the leader of government business to lead us to a new bill or Article 106. The bill is gazetted for us to know, or we are continuing wanting under Article 106 to suspend our standing order to take it as a matter of urgency. Rejection of the bill. We don't want to be taken by surprises. So let the leader of government business indicate to us when the bill will come to Parliament and in what form we should anticipate or expect it.
I said, if we're able to conclude the discussions on the way forward for the E-levy. It will be introduced in the House on Friday. If we couldn't finish, then it will come this week. Now, the course of the discussion facilitated the introduction in the House on Friday, which is why I said to us that if we couldn't, then it will come to this week. Mr. Speaker, even before walking in here, the minority leader, who is the ranking member of the Business Committee, asked about the status, and I told him with all emphasis, Mr. Speaker, we on this side want to stand with the Republic to ensure the revitalization of the economy. If people want to see the collapse of the economy, so be it for them. We want to stand with the Republic.
Well, here we are. Thank you for staying on the AM show, and we're about to get into our big stories for today. We're going to start with what you just heard, the back of that, and there is the talk as well about the support base for the E-levy. Some saying that 56% of MPP members say they are against the E-levy. We'll get into the broader discussion. What do we expect on the floor of Parliament, and even the dynamics when it comes to Jechikwe or merely going according to the law. Well, we get into that first bit as we engage Sam George, Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram. He'll be joining us shortly. We also have joining us in the studio Akwesi Konedu on the E-levy. We're also going to be talking about fuel prices going up, the price stabilization levy, deregulation, and more of that. And we shall also talk again about the Speaker's absence, the Right Honourable Alban Sumana Kingsford Backman, and how it is going to influence the decisions, the fuel price increments. Duncan Amwa, he's Executive Director for COPEC. Stay with us. So let me say a very good morning to Akwesi Konedu, Member of Parliament, Manchia North. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
You're most welcome.
I like your outfit. You're looking very sharp.
African wear. I'm not a suit tie person most often. And however, I mean, our Speaker nowadays comes in cloth, headgear, war boots, and the rest. He's trying to access to promote our identity as Africans and Ghanaians. So however, we have already started promoting that when he also got in. So I thank you for liking.
Oh, so you guys started even before
Backman
started proposing this thing about going African and all of that.
I mean, I mean, most parliamentarians, you just find boo-boo, just as I am, in up and down, in African prints, sewn here, and the rest. So
is it something you agree with, his stance that historically this is colonial? It is a vestige of colonialism, this whole bit about the attire, and that he's only going to use it when there are ceremonial, occasions during regular sittings of the House?
Well, I just don't ascribe to that.
You don't ascribe to it? Why?
You see,
that's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it?
No.
You say you are all for African attire. By the way, we cannot guarantee that this
is coming from. I mean, this is Parliament. I mean, it's totally a borrowed form that we are using. Yes, we used to have an African setup. You have your chiefs, you have Nananum seated in state, trying to adjudicate of matters, trying to promulgate laws, even from the days of old. Even when you got there, the chief will be in a certain regalia that will differentiate the chief from the other Nananum that are seated. You don't go and find an Oman with Dukru all in the same attire. For even seated in state as a Santaman, dressed in the same regalia as other Nananum would have been dressed in. So you don't obviously go on the tangent that it is a colonial relic that we are still trying to promote, and therefore because of that. No.
He didn't necessarily say because of that, but he says it's one of the reasons, and that we should sell our own.
No problem. I mean, selling our own in a different regalia doesn't speak that you are just trying to put a colonial relic on us. You are just being different for who you are. You are the Speaker. You come in different. I mean, it's done everywhere. You don't go and find a judge seated in court. Similarly, the same as lawyers and clerks who come into the courtroom. There must be a certain differentiation.
Right.
That is why I disagree with him. Not necessarily about him asking us to promote our identity and our culture. Not at all.
Right.
Yes.
Well, Thanks for the historical antecedents that you to talk about them. How is Manhyia North?
Oh, yeah, let me say a very good morning to Manhyia North for Santima. Manhyia North is very well. I mean, the people in Manhyia North, the constituents, I mean, the confidence they reposed in me over a year ago is so solid. And I'm also trying as much as possible to put in my effort as they anticipate from me, as they expect from me. And as well in Manhyia North, I'll take this opportunity to greet my constituency executives and thank them very, very, very much for their support and dedication towards the cause of our duty. Because, you know, now as we have 138, 137, it takes a lot away from us being able to visit our constituency. So you must have your brother's wedding. I only had to leave Parliament probably around 10, set off around 3 a.m. and go to Kumasi at 6:20.
Wow.
Yes, for the program.
And all because you had to be there. In case the E-levy had been tabled, you would have been expected to be there to vote.
And on Thursday, I was in Kumasi and I returned on Thursday, and I had to do that on Friday also. So it tells you how it is now. So if you have such dedicated individuals in your constituency who would obviously hold the fort for you and hold the back for you, that we are trying as much as possible to have solutions to them. And I know and I pray that as time goes on, we'll be able to do that. Whilst we are on it, I will just ask for their patience and time, their continuous reminder of the things that we all set for ourselves to be doing, and mind have a hectic time trying to do that. But because they are also in line with us in doing what they've asked us to do, they would obviously also give us a renewal of our mandate.
Right. So if I look at your constituents and all of that, I see that you have just around 55, 56,000 of them. Since you took office, what are some of the things that you think you have done that have inured to the benefit of your constituents? I mean, very briefly.
Not necessarily. The things that I have done, the constituents do know. Just as you just say, but most of them are not. I mean, it is also said, I know that they just says that you don't just light a candle and put it under the stool, you must put it on top. However, not to sell myself. And security was and is still one of our biggest challenges. So we needed to put in some measures that will help us to curb some of these things. Although we cannot zero eliminate it, we needed to bring it very, very down. That is why I would want to, the Executive Men's Club in Brookroom Estate. We set up a neighborhood watchdog, which is working, making sure that at least there are people who, at every point in time, making sure that people in the neighborhood are being looked after. We tried as much as possible to light our communities, because the reason is there are some there to also light up these communities, which we've done. Also, I mean, that is what I would want to do. Education is very key. I had a school that was ravaged by a rainstorm last year. Now it's being removed. There is a KG at Brookroom Estate where if you go find almost about 48 square feet, that is a problem. Currently, as I speak, construction is ongoing for a modern 2 classroom block with a canteen, with a staff common room, and all auxiliary, and these are playground, modern playground for these school kids. These are things that are going on for the benefit of the individuals in the constituency. Yeah, so for most of the things that we've done, probably over the period of about 10 months or so, that, as I may put it, the constituents are aware. For us to do is completion of some of these projects. Road construction is still ongoing. Not that I construct roads or bridges, but at least you also facilitate by moving along with it, making sure that you hit the doors where it matters most to call for it to be done for you. All of these things, the advocacy I'm still doing, making sure that these roads are constructed. But there are still some challenges that I believe, even in the road sector, even in we need almost about 40 classroom blocks now because of the increasing numbers of students in the school, over 3,400.
So quite a lot going on
yes.
in your constituency,
yes.
Manhyia North.
Yes.
Right. And we pray for even more in that constituency.
Even more.
Let me come now to the Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram Pram. Turned up late for an event, and he said he was the late Krobwe Duseng. I'm just going to make mention of this because yesterday Al Hassan Suini came through. He was a little tardy, and it almost degenerated into some claims of bias on my part because he was. So I'm hoping that moving forward, some of those things can be avoided. But welcome aboard, Sam George.
Thank you very much.
Did you sleep well?
Quite well. It was okay.
You look a bit tired.
I am tired, but it's fine.
What have you been up to? Take a minute to tell me about how the people of Ningo Pram Pram feel about the E-levy, for example.
Well, in all honesty, I would not say that I have held public engagements.
Right.
But what I've done is had individual conversations. I've had calls from constituents. I've been in the constituency over the weekends, and you have people come to into it. If you accept the E-levy, we'll fight with you. I mean, and so what I can say from the sense of the interactions I've had with people, even though there's been no structured town hall engagement, but we've been meeting people, been at funerals, been at church programs, and everybody seems to be telling you, they're either giving you a thumbs up for what we've done so far to stop the E-levy, or I'm yet to see any constituent of mine who's called me to or sent me a message to say, please go and pass the E-levy. None, not even one, so far, yeah.
So for you, for that little bracket of analysis, it tells you that your constituents are very firmly, at least those you've spoken with, are very firmly against this.
Absolutely, because it is going to affect the way of life of many of those people. Take, for example, this is someone who is a pensioner. His son is working in Accra. If his son were to send him some amount of money, above 300 cedis, he's diabetic and he has BP, to buy his medication. I mean, the son has managed to squeeze to send him 300 cedis. Medication for his life. You're going to be taking out of that money for him. When his son sends him the money, you take 1.75 out of it. When he goes to the pharmacist to buy his medication and wants to pay by Momo, you want to take 1.75 out of it. But his medicine costs 300 cedis. So how does he, it means he's going to have to reduce the medication he buys for a month, which is supposed to be 300 cedis. Maybe now he's going to be taking only 25 days worth of medication instead of 30 days because of the 1.75, which is when he's paying the pharmacist another 1.75 on the same money, 3.5%.
That is if, so 1.75, of course, now we know Ken Ofori-Atta, finance minister, has been talking about 1.5. But let's even assume it's 1.75.
So that's, no, even at 1.5.
If he doesn't make the payment from his mobile money, if he has cashed out, he wouldn't have to pay the other 1.75%. Do you get it?
Look, at the end of the day,
no, pay an extra 1.75.
Who says the cashing out is not going to attract 1.5%?
I am saying that after cashing out, you mentioned
when you are cashing out,
ways.
Yes, but the point is when you are cashing out, there's also a deduction. Every transaction. So that's what I'm saying. So even when he goes to cash out, he's going to pay the 1.5 as well.
But
no, it's the same thing. No, it's the same thing.
How is it the same thing?
I said 3.5%. Let's even say 3% because it's 1.5 that has been announced now. 1.5 when it was sent to him, 1.5% when he's paying with Momo. If he's not paying with Momo and he goes to an agent, and he goes to an agent to cash out, that transaction is also charged 1.5%. So it still means that when his son sent him the money, 3%.
Back end, right.
Still 3%. Whichever ways you go. Look, it's a pickpocket tax. It's a pickpocket tax. Once there's money in your wallet, the government is picking your pocket. I mean, our government is so desperate. They've resorted
those
to
harsh words. I mean, we know when you refer to someone as a pickpocket, you're basically impugning thievery on government. That's what you're saying.
But government is stealing from the people.
You know that government
is stealing from the people.
Use our resources. I mean, whose money is government?
Tax income, not capital.
Right.
You tax income, not capital. So tell me how that becomes income. How that is income. I mean, you cannot possibly explain anyhow. There is nowhere. The Americans you quote, the British, nobody's taxing anybody's capital. Nobody's taxing money in people's pockets. So long as money is in your pocket, the state is stealing from you. That's what this is.
But just permit me to run this by Sam George. You talk about thievery. In our sub-region, or in our region, there are countries, with all sorts of digital taxes. Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and all of that. I mean, the only difference would be that most of these countries, for those who are implementing service taxes, which is a component of that, those who are doing something like similar to what we are doing, which is something separate from the service tax, are looking at something between 0.2 to 0.5%. Here we are looking at 1.5% as it stands now, not 1.75%. But when you say that other countries they are doing similar things, it's just the rate that is different.
What is happening in other countries and what's happening here? What governments have done in other countries is to take a portion of the service tax. Okay? Now, when you look at the service tax in Ghana, take for example, if government said they were going to take 1.75 or even 3% or even 10% of the 1%, the service tax, there wouldn't have been a furore. because that is a service tax I pay already. So if you're taking it from the service provider.
Is hitting me.
Absolutely.
You're taking it from
You're taking it from the service provider. 0.25. Again, that's a hoax. That's a lie. When Keno Furiata says they've gotten the telcos,
I don't know whether the deductions have kicked in yet.
No. When they say when they roll out E-levy, the telcos are going to reduce by 0.25. It's a lie. It's only MTN. Vodafone currently charges 0%. So when you say Vodafone has reduced by 0.25, is Vodafone going to be charging negative 0.25? No.
But transactions are on MTN. So
Chief.
I mean,
Technicalities and finance, it cannot be. If you are saying you've gotten MTN to reduce, you say you've gotten MTN. Don't tell us you've gotten the telcos.
Right.
There are several telcos that offer that service. Now, apart from the telcos, the MNOs who run mobile money services, several other EMIs exist. There's Hubtel. And there are people who use those services as well. There are also EMIs. So what are we talking about? Now, the point must be made here that, look, when the government says that, when you suggest that they are doing something similar to other countries, it is not the case. There is no country that is charging 1.75 or 1.5 or even 1% as a separate charge from what the service tax is. Right. And so government must just ask itself, and look, let's call a spade a spade. I wonder how the government people, right, they claim that they were going to get 6.7 billion Ghana cedis. As we speak today, they are still calling 6.7 billion. I'm sure if you ask Konedu what the E-levy will give to them, he'll tell you 6.7 billion. And I don't blame him. That's what the finance ministry is talking about. But you see, unless the finance ministry is revising that figure downwards, why? We're already in February. January is gone. When they did projections, it was for the fiscal year, January to December. January is gone. When they did the projections that gave them 6.75 billion, it was at a rate of 1.75%. You say you are reducing that rate to 1.5 calculation. That you claim now you are bringing in. Those exemptions would then mean that at this point in time, when you carry out some transactions that you have factored in to make some monies off, to make your 6.9 billion or 6.7 billion will no longer be there. All of those have not been factored in. They're still calling 6.7 billion. So clearly it tells you that even the actuary is wrong. The actuarial science behind this is wrong. Look, it is impossible for anyone to explain to us this E-levy. This E-levy, it's like the way, because as it goes along, as we keep exposing them and exposing the paucity of logic and thinking in the whole policy, they keep refining as they go on. But clearly there was no clear thought process on the implementation of this policy.
Indeed, digital taxes across the continent that are not being applied on the service charge. And here is what I meant. So there are those implementing between 0.5% and 1%. And most of the countries with a rate above 1% have the rate applied on the service fees, like I was mentioning. There are countries which are implementing a rate between 0.2 and 5%, and those are being applied on the transaction.
Which countries are this? Mention the countries.
I'll give you some of them shortly, because I know Uganda, for example, has its own issue. You know, Uganda started with a 1%.
And what happened?
Oh, that story is there. After some months,
what happened?
They had to go down to 0.5%.
Because even
in fact, a quarter of those who were using it dropped.
Because it dropped, not a quarter, it dropped in the first 3 months, it dropped by 80%.
Well, that is another statistic.
80%. That is what caused the drop from 1% to 0.25. That saw it rise back again to somewhere around 55% of its original usage. But it dropped in the first 3 months by 80%.
But at least
the statistics
the
are
point
there.
is that they implemented it.
And what happened?
And that is what I'm saying. No, we can talk about the after effects.
Is it not foolishness? Wait.
We can talk about the after effects.
Is it not foolishness for you to want to do something that you see someone else has done that failed, and you want to do the same thing?
Sam George, I can concur with you in the after fact, but the point is that you were asking me, did another country do it? The answer is yes.
No, and they did it. What happened?
Let's go to...
That's not what the case is today. Is Uganda charging 1% today?
They are not.
So...
But the point is that they did. So our case is unique.
We are talking about current things.
Let's bring in Akwesi Kunedu, Member of Parliament for Manhyia North, and let me start from this angle. It's an interesting, a curious thought that came to my mind. This E-levy. Let's switch places. Let's say Sam George and his NDC are the ones pushing the E-levy. They are in government, and you are in opposition, right? E-levy as it stands now, 1.5%. How would you have reacted to it? Would you have supported it?
Thank you very much. Yes, in the circumstances that we find ourselves, I would. And I would never have used the word foolishness, as my brother here wants to use that word. And I'm not quite sure that any constituent of mine will just call me and tell me I'll fight with you if you support the E-levy for us to have it. I mean, what would have been the alternative? For us to go to IMF, go seek for $1 billion. That would be disbursed for us over 3 years. Then they will come here with their conditionalities as a headmaster in a school. Bring white socks, a black shoe, a yellow tie. Before you are
Structural adjustment and working with the Bretton Woods institutions is nothing new. We've been there since what?
But must it continue?
The 60s, 70s?
Yes, but there was slave trade. Why did we for you to do it for yourself? Rather than believe that that has been done over and over and over years. So what is the big deal? Let's continuously be under structural adjustment. I mean, yes, must we go to the IMF for extended credit facility? Whilst we probably can do what they will be giving to us, giving us all those conditionalities. Don't employ, don't do that, cut that expenditure, of which you and I know these expenditures are very, as the head of your family, that you probably need to put your kids in school. There are 2 of them, now one turns up, so your expenditure goes up. So you probably will go to your friend Sam George and ask him for, say, a loan, or for him to come and oversee how you manage your home. Then he tells you, you have 2 kids already in school. One is trying to go, the other one to school. By the time that the other one would have been going to school, there'll be no time for that person to go and learn. Even age may have catch up with that person. Is that what we are actually trying to tell ourselves? That is why I would have supported them if they were in power. And we have the current situation we have in the world, not only in our country. Just today, the United States debt has crossed 13 trillion, much more earlier than it was expected to reach there. I mean, what are we trying to say? I mean, it's a total global meltdown.
Status over a while, 11 to 12 to 13 trillion. It's always been in that trajectory. So I don't know about crossing 13 trillion.
Yeah, they
how
did.
Much of a difference that
today.
is making.
Even today, your own station, Joy News, in the morning when they went for their BBC, it was said, and each person now owes almost about $90,000 in terms of them trying to do that. Saying that when you transfer money, say 300 Ghana cedis to your grandfather for medicine, your grandfather is rich. Nobody is saying so. When your grandfather takes his momo and goes to withdraw money in cash, that is not a transfer. So how does that levy apply on that? We'll be so much agitated against that. But during the implementation, we would have found that. Because all that we are trying to do is that we want to sink the entirety of that whole policy, make sure that people do not in any way agree to it. But however, if you go to these pharmacies where they are registered for income tax, where they are registered with the GRA, where they are registered for VAT, and you are paying, or any institution that does that, we must make clear. And it is. Even if when you go to restaurants that are registered to accept, that they call specialized merchants, that receive E-levy, who are registered with GRA for income tax and all of those things, you are not going to pay E-levy on them. When we are even paying to people, even online, and those individuals that we are going to receive, and we are still talking about 6.9 billion or whatever. The initial projection that we were all talking about was the 6.9, bearing in mind that it would have kickstarted the implementation of the budget. As we go along and we continuously engage, some will be taken out, others will be taken. The reality will be when there is a clear-cut amount that we are going to charge. Of all of these figures will come. How do anybody come out? Now, in the midst of all of these negotiations, trying to bring the percentage down, even some advocating for us to increase the base as from, say, 100 to 300, be able to tell you in the midst of all of these things that we are going to get 4.3, 1.2. No. You will stick by the original amount to tell people that this is how much we are going to rake in as a country. As you all see, the initial inertia in people would ordinarily even reduce maybe the transfer that people would do and their engagement with these mobile money transactions and the rest. So all of these things, that is why at every point in time where there are policies and the rest, even projects, the calls for review in all of these matters. So it is not necessarily about anybody trying to still stick by the 6.9 billion that we are talking about. You talked about some African countries who have implemented E-levy and the fact that some of these African countries in the rollout of it, they reduce all of these things, have done. That was bad for them, and necessarily, or did not go well for them, means that each and every individual necessarily would also face the same fate. One, why? I sitting here, if you give me chloroquine, even if you add the Piriton or whatever and whatever, I'll still itch. I'm not quite sure. Even my junior brother doesn't itch. It doesn't mean that chloroquine necessarily is not good for anybody. We are only talking about us. Now, we are in some sort of an economic death of COVID, but necessarily, my brother, it is not that we would want to rely on COVID, but that is the situation. You and I know that over a period of 2 years.
I posed this question to Dr. Stephen Amwa yesterday. I'll pose it to you as well. If you had to quantify the impact COVID has had on our economy, what would you say?
I can probably tell you. Let me give you an example. In the year 2020, whilst we projected to grow over 5%, how much did we grow? We grew at 0.4. Look at the African, in pain again. So that quantification, you can even put in the expenditure or the revenue that we're going to get in that year. So even if we projected in that year to rake in, say, about 70 billion, and we grew at 4%, it technically tells you that we aren't even going to have that amount. The countries that grew in negative tells you that even if they have stockpiles of money sitting there, they probably are going to borrow to compensate for even that money that had been wiped up. We are talking about almost about 2 years in our lives. In this country, that we never even had a global economic meltdown like this, a pandemic. But we went to IMF, we had crises on our hand, they were inbuilt here. We are here telling ourselves that if we introduce taxes, it means, my brother used the word julo, which means thief, we probably. But in our facets of life, both direct or indirect, we take taxes from people. Why? Then you sit here and say that even if you take income tax from people, you are stealing from them. Because it's their money that they've earned. They've worked for it. So why are you going to take some from it as taxes that you'd want to use to
But there are differences.
What are the differences? It's still money that you are taking from some that appear to be one of the don'ts. Then I will tell you, yes.
We are?
Yes. I would then tell you.
You tax my salary even before it hits my account.
Then why should we tax?
If I then go for my salary,
yes,
and I put it in my mobile money wallet,
yes,
and I make certain transactions, and you're going to tax that apart from what is already being slapped on my salary, what would you call that?
So why should we even slap taxes on your salary? Argue on that perspective also. That is your money. You've earned it. It's the same thing.
Yes, but there are principles on double taxation. You've taxed me once. Why tax me again?
This is not principle of double taxation. It has nothing to do with that. Let me tell you something. When you go buy fuel, there are taxes on fuel. Aren't that also principles of taxation, double taxation? The indirect taxes that we pay, and they also double taxes, but we still pay them. It's just because we are at a critical moment that my brother here do understand that for them, the best way is to make sure that they hold the country. And I'm not saying they hold, and 6 to intend implementing all of these funds that will be raked in will go to the benefit of the ordinary Ghanaian, as they will so put it that they are fighting for the ordinary Ghanaian. The ordinary Ghanaian may have a shift of focus and attention towards the president implementing that and the person benefiting. So therefore, it makes their quest to rise to power maybe a very difficult task for them. That is not fair on their part. Be truthful to yourself. Tell the ordinary Ghanaian. When we went for the IMF bailout some years ago, there were Ghanaians, nurses and teachers who stayed home for more than 3 to 4, 5 years. They could not be employed. But now, if you have had an opportunity, even in this era, that the whole world is even, whilst in the year 2020, government spent on non-productivity because people actually weren't working for about 9 months, but they were still being paid. Those were monies that went to people who actually never did any work during those months because of COVID. Not because they did not want to do, but government needed to make sure that all of these individuals survive. And now we are at a critical juncture that we as people must also come back to help our own selves. Make sure that the developmental challenges that we do have, we are able to meet them. We don't go bring a headmaster onto ourselves who will now be directing us as to what to be doing.
Back of COVID, right?
Yes, you and I know. There were some times back, just about 9 months or a year ago, that you could not even move about without having a nose mask on. Did we have that previously, say 2 or 3 years ago? It restricted your movement. You were afraid, weren't you?
Right.
But because of hindsight, now we can sit in the comfort that we have now and then go back, castigate all the efforts that we made during those days to sustain human life. You see, when you want to sustain human life, you do certain things in the spur of the moment to make sure that human life is sustained, such that when the person has life and strength, the person can then recoup and get back what we may have lost.
And that is what the E-levy is here to do. And
we must also be looking beyond the immediate hardships that we will go in and be looking at how to sustain ourselves, sustain the economy, sustain the country going forward.
Let me just couch this bit right before I bring in some George. You spoke about our debt profile and what it's looking like now, even mentioning the United States. So current figures point to the fact that the debt to GDP ratio of the United States stands at 133.3%. When you look at a country like Japan, one of the world's biggest economies, top 5, 256.9%. Canada, 109.9%. Singapore, 137.9%. But can we rub shoulders on any level, economically speaking, with these countries, though they have these gargantuan debts? We, of course, are hovering somewhere around 83.5%. So when you country like the US, we all know about the borrowing of a country like the United States or even Japan. But what are the economies like? How robust are they against the shocks we are facing now, COVID-19, against which we are flailing? So you must put all of those dynamics together when you make such assertions. But the question I want to pose is, with going to the IMF, he is saying that if he were a finance minister, he would be convincing Mr. President that it was about time we went back, that the 6.9 billion Ghana cedi E-levy target cannot be realized, and that there are a lot of exemptions. In his estimation, the maximum amount we can get from it is 5, will ensure some stability, and we're going to get some $3 billion. How do you react to that?
That is why he's not a finance minister.
But he has been a don in your finance setup in this very administration.
Let me ask you a very simple. When he was the chairman of the finance committee, and the NDC took us to IMF, and he came in, what did he say? He says our time at the IMF was a waste of time, that the NDC took us to the IMF. That is why he's not a finance minister. I mean, we always would want to have what I may term as an easy comfort zone. What is he talking about? Nobody is saying that now that we've even passed January, the transactions in January that we anticipate us raking in about 5 billion, approximately, let me put it, say, is about $1 billion. He's talking about how much are we going to get from the IMF. Can he estimate and even say authoritatively that if we go to IMF, we are going to get that $3 billion? And for how many years are they going to disburse that $3 billion to us? Over a period of time, we are talking about that 5 billion or that 6 billion, equivalent to 1 billion in a year. So approximately is the same thing. Now you go to them. I gave you the example of you being the head of your household. You go to your brother Sam George, he comes to sit in your home, even direct as to how you even send your kids to school, how you even must climb your bed. At the end of the day, whilst you can cut on some expenditures that you do, fair deal, whilst you can internally reduce certain things and generate some revenue that you probably may use the same way that those monies that would have been given to you, but without the conditionalities that will bring are also suffering. These are the same individuals who also have that. Why can't we as people?
Okay.
Let me just say this. Let us believe in ourselves for once. If not for anything, our first president, Osajefo, said the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. Our president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, said, and I would want to say it as he said, yet it's also come there. Let me tell you why. There are so many things. Yes. And I would
sitting on money.
Yes.
No longer
yes. I would want to tell you why. There have been so many things that we've done now that weren't done then.
Right.
Secondly, in all of those social interventions and social goods and services that we are providing, without taking some out.
Right.
That tells you, see, we are making use of what we
made
have.
In that respect. Let me come to Sam George, and I'm going to give you ample time to also react to some of the things that he has said. And my question to you would be, do you side with Dr. Sibe Yeboah on this when he says, and we have had a lot of IMF regimes in this country, back to back, even under your administration. Do you side with him? Is that the way to go, rather than what you people have called the killer E-levy tax?
Just before I address that, just to handle a few things he said. First and foremost, let's put it on record that it is incorrect to suggest that when we went into the IMF, under the last IMF program, the NDC went into essential services were exempted. And those were doctors, teachers, and nurses. And we did have postings of those persons. So that's the first point that I need to make. That was incorrect as he put it out. Again, he says that if we go into an IMF program, it's going to be difficult for us to do recruitment. But I thought the finance minister, who is the exchequer, who controls the purse, recently just told us that the public service is full and that for any recruitment into the public service. So what are you talking about when it comes to recruitment of people? Now, we are where we are not because of COVID. We are where we are because of the mismanagement of the economy. You ask them to put a value on COVID. And that's one thing we've been asking for in Parliament. They're unable to. We're saying to them, let us know what the government expenditure, complete expenditure on COVID, has $100 million. Can we see at how much did you buy each one? We want to do an audit of this. They're refusing to show us the figures. But what we know is that for COVID, you talk about what COVID did to you in terms of losses. You're not talking about what it did for you in terms of gain. You got $1 billion from the same IMF. Free money. 1 billion COVID relief, US dollars. You got another 1 billion in special drawing rights from the same IMF. In fact, in this year's budget, you talk as if going to an IMF program, $750 million as part of their SDR, special drawing rights. You are taking $750 million. Last year, it took $250 million. 1 billion. So what are you talking about? You are effectively in an IMF program. You are just refusing to admit it. Okay? You took 10 billion. You borrowed 10 billion Ghana cedis from the Central Bank of Ghana because of COVID. You went into our heritage fund, our stabilization fund, and took $270 million. So you don't give me free.
Are you saying they didn't give us
they
free
didn't.
water and electricity?
Do you pay water? Do you pay water bill in your house?
I do.
And have you seen the increment in your water bill? And what was the explanation given by the information minister? Was it not that the water you took for free, now they are taking the money back from you? Was that not what he said? And after taking that money back from you for 6 months, then they introduced a COVID levy. You don't pay back for.
But at least at the time, it was given for free.
You see, it is this mentality that makes politicians take advantage of the Ghanaian.
What mentality?
The mentality that they give you something.
The fact is that at the time, it was given for free. I mean,
even
if we are having to pay for it.
But, Masa, before Ben, okay. It was free, but we're having to pay for it. What is free that you pay for? How do you pay for something that was free? Salvation is free. Show me how you pay for it. The air you breathe is free. Show me for it. And so when people say we are in this fix because of COVID, gentlemen and ladies, come on. Smell the coffee. We are not here because of COVID. We are here because of your mismanagement of the economy. You've driven this economy into a ditch. And look, the COVID... They paint a picture. Look, COVID has become like the medicine that is sold at Tema Station. It fixes infertility, fixes high blood pressure, fixes... No. What is wrong? No, look, we can't tone down. It is going to affect my pocket, so I should tone down. What is wrong with the government we voted for? We have to ask them. What is wrong with them? In the budget, you told us that your revenue estimations are going to come to 130 billion Ghana cedis.
Right.
E-levy is supposed to be 6.7 or 6.9 billion.
Right.
Out of 130 billion. And they're painting a picture that if they don't have that 6.9 billion, they table with the government and said, look, is your problem revenue? And we heard President Akufo-Addo yesterday say the problem was revenue gaps. Is the problem revenue? Okay, that's fine. 6.9 billion. We will help you raise 10 billion, not even 6.9 billion. And we have shown them how to raise 10 billion without introducing an E-levy. They said they don't want to hear it. Is it because the E-levy is yet another create, loot and share? If we didn't raise the alarm in Parliament, even before they will introduce the E-levy, even before Parliament will pass it, they had selected a company of their own, changed shareholding to represent persons in government, and then assigned 240 million Ghana cedis, $40 million to that company to collect E-levy. I mean, if this is not thief
the people of Ghana in the eye, are you going to tell us, really, that looking at our portfolio currently when it comes to debt, if you were in power at this time, you would actually push for going to the IMF as against an E-levy so that locally we can mop up funds and take care of our business rather than go to the IMF and whatever the conditionalities may be, have to suffer the brunt of that? Is that what you're saying?
I look the people of Ghana in the face and say to them, if the NDC was in power, we wouldn't have run the economy into this ditch. that has brought us here. That is the hole they are trying to fix. Look, Konedu made reference to the US and co. How are they stimulating their economies post-COVID? Are they taking from people or giving people stimulus? In those economies, they are handing out checks, cash checks, to their citizens as a way of re-kicking their economies after COVID. We are relying on economies in ICU and you are still taking blood from an ICU patient to go and put in a blood bank. You use the example of a family man and say that if you go to the IMF, it's like bringing someone into your family house. But if you are a father who has taken the money for your children's school fees and their food to go and do cha-cha, and now your children are hungry and you come to me, and I'm saying to you that I will give you money to feed your kids, but I'm not going to give it to you because you're an irresponsible father. Because when you took your salary, instead of taking care of your kids, instead of feeding your kids and putting a roof over their head, you used it to go and drink beer and gamble. And now your children are sleeping hungry. So because of the love I have for your children and your family, and even you yourself, despite your irresponsibility, you go back because it's an addiction.
We can't necessarily vouch, though. I mean, the IMF programs, we can't necessarily vouch. We've taken sums from the Bretton Woods institutions that we've not been justifiably able to account for in terms of the reasons we went for them. I mean, that's a non-starter when it comes to conversation. So the whole bit into the wastage could happen, even if we went to the IMF.
Not necessarily. Those are the things that have affected your rating. Those are the things that form the benchmark for you to have been able to go out and say, my economy is B+ or B rated. As we speak today, Standards & Poor's, Fitch, are about to downgrade Ghana from B- to C, to a CCC, which is toilet paper status. In terms of, really say you love this country. If you say you love this country, and look, people say the MPP is afraid of going to IMF because of the political damage it may do to them. It is not about whatever Sam George or any NDC communicator will come and say the things Bawumia said. MPP, do you think MPP cares about those things? They don't care about those things. They don't care. And some of our friends in the media crowd will not even discuss it. They will properly to the IMF. And we will get to see the rot, the gogomi that's inside. We will see it. The rot, that is the maggots that have infested our books, we will see. And that is what they are trying to cover. They don't want to go for proper scrutiny and proper audits of our books. Because at that time, we will then see what the true COVID expenditure has been. What is the hole we found ourselves in? How deep is that hole? How wide is that hole? We will see. That's what they're afraid of.
Akwesi, so he is suggesting a cover-up. You're trying to use some of the question for you.
Isn't that even an indictment on him as a member of parliament to tell me that up until we go to the IMF, we cannot have proper audit of our books?
You said that the E-levy based on the Economic Times. He is saying the IMF based on the Economic Times, and that is corroborated by your own Dr. Osei Yeboah.
That we should go to the IMF.
Yes.
Otherwise, the country, we should not be able to run the country.
It's an alternative.
Why should we take that alternative? When we have a choice, tells us that we should go to the IMF so that we can have proper audit of our books. Why?
I don't think that's what he said. He says you are
He
afraid
says we are
to go
afraid.
to the IMF
let me tell you,
because they will audit your books properly.
Let me tell you one thing. It is under their watch that they misreported to the IMF, and we're fine. We're all in this country. So that whole mentality of them knowing very well that whenever they are there, they cannot report well. They feel like that is what each and every person will do, the same thing. Please, we are not interested in all of those things. We are interested in making sure that this country runs and runs well on its own steam. We cannot continuously always be over-reliant on other people for our own sustenance. We must as people. That is why, remember I told you, we sit here with the benefit of hindsight and believe that some expenditures that were made then in 2020 during the peak of COVID were either outrageous or, let me put it, whether they were insane or whether they know. The face shield, not the nose mask, costed a piece 50 Ghana cedis then. Now, it's even given for free. But at that time, we needed it. So assuming that you had gone to buy a nose mask, that shield, that spectacle shield for 50 Ghana cedis then, and now Sam comes to sit here and tells you that you made record was in short supply of all of these things, and we are trying to make means as to get some to protect the lives of this country and making sure that people were able to leave school. Children, when they reopened school, could have gone to school and the rest. And you sit here with that hindsight. It is out of all of these things that as a country, we went into 5 years of almost doom so under them, but we still paid electricity. whilst we were buying diesel.
Okay.
We've forgotten about all of these things.
I'll come to you with my other substantive question. But let's look at some of what you've been sending us on social media. Pace Creek says, watching live from Italy, Akakpo, my worry is that the same government collapsed all the savings and loans companies, denying all the market women and rural folk the opportunity to bank. Let's ask ourselves how much financial transactions took place daily in the savings and loans companies. In the past, all those transactions are now taking place through the Momo platform. The rise of the Momo transactions platform is due to the collapse of the savings and loans companies by the same government. Okay, Cecil says, please, if you apply the threshold of the E-levy to your discussions, you will realize how unrealistic your scenarios are. And he's tagging you, Sam George. The concept is that if you can spend 100 Ghana cedis every... Okay, so that is a thought from Cecil. Aminu sends in a comment that I can't see fully. Okay, so Emmanuel says, I ask what type of tax is the E-levy? It's a levy, actually. Are our capital going to be taxed? Are our savings going to be taxed? That's what you're asking. Which implementation of tax ends up collapsing jobs? And you are here supporting this. That's it's Dignity GH sending in that message. Asante says, the only reason Ghana is attractive now is the peace we have. If they try to impose things on us and we lose it, we won't know how to ever get up. Pray for Ghana. Let's protect our peace by all means. Hashtag AM Show. Masaudu says, we don't support it today, tomorrow, and a billion years to come. Period. Hashtag AM Show. We've already read Cecil's comment. Okay, so he says again, maybe we can just go back to Cecil's other comment. Apparently, he had sent in one earlier. I would like to ask Sam George, is he saying Ghanaians have paid for all the water they used when the government asked for no payment? Okay, so I'm sure Sam George would answer that when we get back to it. Next one. Banse says, it's true, but you people can't be trusted. I mean, the NDC, you'll be shouting E-levy won't be passed, but in case Kwame Addo and his subordinates pass it when you... Well, quite a point, because the MPP also came in and worked on that. So quite a number of things. Just a quick one in here. Make it very snappy because it's on the back of some of the comments we've had. Guinea-Bissau nearly fell. I'm sure you followed that situation. A lot of our West African neighbors have fallen to coup d'etats. And this person is suggesting that the economic instability, which runs through, is becoming a problem. And if we are not careful, we could suffer if we impose things on the people. What do you think? What do you make of it?
Let me see. When you talk about economic instability and
that is what justifies.
That is what
they use to justify.
So then you ask that when they use that to justify and they come, are they able to bring economic prosperity? Are they able to bring that? I mean, you see, when you have a bunch of people who would ordinarily buy their own cells because of what they would want to achieve for themselves in a certain amount that they believe they are not getting, and they would want to blame an establishment or the rest. We've gone through that before. And let us ask ourselves if that really helped us. That is why I initially said that if we as a people cannot take our destiny into our own hands, when you give birth to a child from a year old, that probably, even if nowadays that kids go to school very early, a year old, to about 22 years, that a person may finish a tertiary school, that a person can become employable. You spend on that person with the hope and anticipation that in the future, when you are down, he would then or she would then come to take over. And let us believe that all that we are doing through all of these things and the sacrifices that we are going to make, that is why we say it's a sacrifice. Because we are going to pull out something that we ordinarily would have had for ourselves towards national building, nation building, towards our own future as a people. My brother here talked about the American doling out checks to people, but he forgot to say where other countries, people during COVID and lockdown were asked to take out of their pension to spend. Like for instance, if it was to be in Ghana, they would have asked to go to SNATE. SNATE would have reduced some of the amount, the lump sum that you take home when you are 60 years to spend today. That did not happen in this country. This country continuously paid people and even paid their SNATE. When there was no COVID and people were actually even working, that you took SNATE contributions out of their salary, those amounts were not paid for a period. You and I were in this country that all of these agitations went on. But when His Excellency and the MPP party came to power, he is in the best position and his party is in the best position to have come to help us. He talks about mismanagement, but he doesn't talk about what happened when COVID came in. He talks about water, that we were asked to enjoy free water, but now we are paying for it because of whatever he believes that it is a matter for us to use that to recoup. But the ordinary Ghanaian out there, if at that time, assuming, without admitting, that we are being made to pay today, all of those protocols that came from the people that you'd want us to take our country back in a different dimension, that one was from World Health Organization, that was in health. Right. Now you'd want us to go to IMF. Right. All of it came that we needed to do something. If people were not given free water then, could we have even be able to pull through some of the things that we did at that time? And assuming that people were asked to even buy at that time, even at the rates that we were buying at that time, and they were not working. Because you know that even our mothers who go to market and ply their trade as petty traders could not do that. They lost revenue at that time. The country and the government saw it prudent to make sure that we contain lives and make sure that we prosper. But we are not here.
Let's move the conversation.
Tell us the best alternative that you may have.
It's interesting. So just to scrape past the E-levy, I want to touch on something brief before we get to the speakership and what the Right Honourable's absence is going to mean. But Global Info Analytics put together a piece which points to the fact that 56% of self-confessed NPP members are against this E-levy policy. 86% of self-confessed NDC supporters are also against it. On average, 73% are saying no. And of course, I don't know whether it paints a picture for you and for you, Sam George, as well. But I just want your brief take on this. What is happening to the Asin North Member of Parliament, the Supreme Court and its directive for the summons to be served on him and all of that? Do you feel it is a political witch hunt just to reduce your numbers in Parliament?
Well, I mean, on the infographics thing you just spoke about, it's obvious what the thinking of the ordinary Ghanaian is, and even with the messages that came through.
But I want us to focus on
that.
that.
It just tells us what the thinking of Ghanaians are, reference the E-levy, and I think that government should just listen to the Ghanaian people and find alternatives. There are several alternatives. If you give me time, I could give you, off the top of my head, like 3 different alternatives to the E-levy.
Owing to time, I would like us to...
But on the issue of the Asin North gentleman, it's obvious what government is trying to do and how they're working the machinery of state to see how they...
Working the machinery of state. Are you suggesting the judiciary is in bed with the executive?
The judiciary is part of the state. It's part of the state, just like the legislature. The state is made up of 3 arms: executive, legislature.
There's separation of powers.
But it is still the judiciary doesn't exist outside the state. It exists within the state.
Yeah,
and
but I'm pointing out to you. We can go back to our teachings on Montesquieu and the separation of powers and all of that. It happens. I mean, we know what it is.
I get where you're coming from, and it's because of how you're thinking about what I said. I said the machinery of state, and you see, unfortunately, it is because of what we have seen happen under this government that your mind will immediately go there. That when I say machinery of state, I'm seeing the judiciary as a working of the executive. No, I didn't say the machinery of the executive. I said the machinery of state. The executive, the judiciary, the legislature, all arms of the state, and they are all part of the machinery of the state. I'm just saying that it is sad to see how these blatant, overt steps are being taken to seek to reduce the NDC's numbers in Parliament. I mean, the very same people who say they are trying to build consensus are going after members of the minority, Collins Dauda, Atuforsen. I mean, that's a not gentleman, the Jomoro MP.
If wrong is done, must the law not kick in?
Wrong? The MPs who benefited from the shooting and killing of people during the killing of the last 8. What are we saying? Why is the state not prosecuting the case in Techiman, for example, where people were killed? Why is the state not prosecuting that? So, you see, to be non-partisan, it is partisan. The law will take its course. The law justices, the law resides in their bosom. But they must bear in mind that the judiciary remains the last bastion of hope for the ordinary people. And when the ordinary people begin to lose faith and trust in the judiciary, that justice can be served there, it is inimical to our survival as a democracy and as a state. Okay? When people think and have that opinion and that mindset that you have a unanimous FC playing some football there, and things you can't get justice in our courts anymore, it becomes problematic. And so we hope and pray that the Lord Justices would dispense justice. And justice ought to be fair. And that's all we'll say. But whatever the case is, the NDC stands united. We stand behind our comrade Alex Kwesen, and we know that we will pull through.
Let's quickly talk about fuel prices and that was the last bite on the E-levy.
Not the E-levy. At least on the point about
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
And about the
30 seconds, my brother.
One. I mean, I'm sad when my brother speaks the way he speaks. This matter has been
my speech should make you happy.
This matter has been going high courts, the appeals court, the Supreme Court, and the rest. And if you sit here and you start lambasting them under the caveat of trying to be, it should be seen that justice is being done. I remember the words that was used by the minority leader on the very night that the issue started. He said, he is a full-grown man who would want to take a decision for himself. Whether the courts have served him an injunction or not, let him bear his own cross after that. Give him an opportunity. He understands what he is doing. And now you sit here, and you see the problem that we have as a people is one of these things. He used the word we want to build consensus, but we are prosecuting people. Must crime be left out just because that now you hold 137 and you want to use that to hold government in ransom? So when people may even have done wrong, let the court decide. Let us not start doing all of these things that the ordinary Ghanaian say when you.
We'll leave it there. Let the court decide. We'll leave it there. Let the court decide.
As some judge, that when he loses faith in the court, but he should not be speaking for people that having
and recovery levies. The National Petroleum Authority has indicated its decision to restore the PSRL on petrol, diesel, and liquefied petroleum gas. Those who deal in liquefied petroleum gas have said that this is going to even let some of those who purchase from them opt for charcoal. It appears you are heaping, back-to-back levies here, taxes there, price shoot-ups everywhere. Akwesi, how do you expect ordinary Ghanaians to react to this?
It is not that we are heaping taxes or we are trying to pile up. This was a tax that was suspended.
Yes.
Yes. And it is
close to January.
Yes, close to January. And it has been reintroduced. All because at that time, prices were going up and the rest, and we needed to just stable it somewhere. But however, you and I know that some of these prices and the combining effect of all of these things, most of it are outside the realm of government, because you and I, in somewhere in the early 2000s, asked that we go to deregulation, that we should give it to the ordinary Ghanaian, the commercial people, who brings in their own fuel to be able to determine the price at fair market value, so that we all will not be experiencing where we have shortages and the rest. And people would also have the desire to do what? To be able to bring in this fuel into trade. And when we gave that opportunity to people, you and I know it's a matter of demand and supply. They go out there, they buy at the rate that is on the market to bring it in. It's a price or a levy that was suspended that have been brought back. We know that it has increased prices. As we all talk about it and consult ourselves, probably there are going to be other areas that we are going to take off from, so that we'll be able to stabilize the prices down for the ordinary Ghanaian and ourselves to benefit from.
Right. Sam George, a minute and a half on that.
When the MPP said they were breaking the 8, Ghanaians thought they were talking about elections. They're talking about fuel prices.
We all know they were talking about elections.
Oh, please. They're talking about fuel prices. The fuel prices are going to break the 8. Even before the end of this year, they will break the 8 with the fuel prices at the rate at which we are going. We will not even celebrate Easter, and we'll break the 8. You get it? This is, and look, fuel politics, thanks to John Mahama. Fuel stopped being a political issue when he completed the deregulation of the fuel sector in 2014, 2015. You understand me? But they played politics with it. If I'm going to use their marking scheme to mark them, then this is as a result of your poor mismanagement. But why is fuel price going up like this? It's forex depreciations. Because on the world market, the price has largely been stable. It's gone up recently by just $7 per barrel. Only $7 per barrel. Okay? It's gone up, it's dropped. We've seen the world market price drop by even $10 per barrel. It didn't reflect here. Why? The problem of fuel pricing in Ghana as one, the raft of taxes, which both parties are guilty of. Both parties are guilty of. But the problem of our fuel prices today is the cedi. It is the depreciation of the cedi because the importers are buying it with dollars. And every day, you've forgotten that in this country, I'm sure you've even forgotten, in this country, we set up a whole team, a football team, so a management team to manage the depreciation of the cedi. They failed. Franklin Kujo was part of that team, said they failed. Today, what is the dollar? Yesterday, people put it out. Dollar is like 6.5. When they took over, it was like 4.1. It is the depreciation of our cedi that is affecting the fuel prices. Dr. Baumia and his economic management team have failed us. They said they arrested the cedi. He sat in this studio, here, this studio, and said he had arrested the studio and the dollar and given the keys to the IGP. Between this studio and the police headquarters, I suspect you pickpocketed the pocket of Dr. Baumia, took the dollar and released the dollar. The dollar no naje gone. The dollar is dancing skelewu on the cedi's head.
When you have the NDC and the MPP in the studio. Anyway, this is where we're going to have to draw the curtains on this conversation. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming. Sam George, Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram Pram. Akwesi Kunedu, Member of Parliament for Manshia North. Right before I go, Akwesi, do you think the Speaker's departure will affect you guys in any way on the E-levy? Just give me a yes or no answer.
Oh, yes.
It will?
Yes.
All right.
And it's even affecting the whole country, not only the E-levy.
Thank you.
Because for any crucial decision that we're taking, our brothers would want to have their 137, we have your 138 to pass. And if the Speaker is not in,
thank you.
And because they would not also want to give a proper interpretation of Article 1046.
On Friday, did they have their 138? Get your 138 first.
Well, something big is actually coming your way. The way you listen to multimedia's radio stations is about to change. Are you ready for it? If you're using a smartphone running on Android, just activate your Google Assistant now and get ready to ask multimedia for a whole new experience. To do this, look for the Google app on your phone. It's the multicolored letter G. Open it and press your display photo or initials on the top right to go to settings, find Hey Google and voice match and open it. Make sure Hey Google is enabled by tapping on the switch until it turns blue. You may have to record your voice so your Google Assistant can identify you anytime you speak. Now you're ready to ask multimedia. The gentlemen are still chatting away in the studio, but their microphones are off. It's always been a pleasure coming your way. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. This is the AM show, and the guests once more, Akwesi Kunedu, Member of Parliament, Manshia North, and Sam George, Member of Parliament, Ningo Pram Pram. We have the news coming your way at 10 and at midday. Do stay with us for the rest of our programming. Lovely day to you.